I love when people will be like, oh, I'm just going to stop by. And I'm like, actually, I'm in Arizona right now. And they're like, what? I just saw on your stories. And I'm like, right.
Yes.
You did. And next week, you'll see that I'm in Arizona and I'm actually not. I'm actually home now. Welcome to the Workhorse Podcast, where we dig deep into the grit, passion, and strategy behind building a successful rural business. We're your hosts.
I'm Kendall Ballantyne, owner of Central Park Farms and marketing for farmers.
And I'm Jessica Garza, owner of Moose Valley Ranch and founder of Market in the Mountains.
This podcast is for hardworking female farmers and rural entrepreneurs who are ready to turn their dreams into thriving businesses. From deep diving business strategies that actually work to balancing farm family life and everything in between.
We're here to give you practical tools, candid insights, and a healthy dose of community support. If you're looking for women who actually cheer you on, are willing to tell you the hard truths, and that understand how much it can throw off your day when the cows get out, you're in the right spot.
This podcast is for the doers, the women who don't stay in one spot for too long, for the workhorses.
I know we talked in episode 8 about online safety, and we really kind of wrapped up kids online, what that looks like. And shame on us. We should have probably shared more of that episode on social media so that people knew the resources that were in there. But it's such a heavy topic, so hard to try to break it down to a 30-second soundbite. And so if you haven't already, before you watch this one, maybe go check out episode 8 so that you can get an idea of where we're starting this conversation from, because we're kind of picking up the thread halfway through and we're going to run with it a little bit today. So we talked about online with your kids, what that looks like, sharing as a business, being a female entrepreneur with children, stepchildren, your own children. That was all in the first half episode. Is that what you would say?
Yeah. Part 1. And I think the other thing that's really important is it talks about your background and why you are uniquely qualified to be teaching on this subject in the first place. It's not like I'm just jumping out there with no background.
Oh, that is very important, I guess, to mention. We should mention it because if someone's popping in. So if you are unaware, I have done almost a decade in law enforcement. I specialized in child sex abuse materials and internet crimes against children, as well as having served on state patrol, county sheriff, and city police officer with all multitude of crimes. So I've kind of done it all. Well, not all of it. I didn't do any federal. Well, I was. That's a lie. Okay, I've got a lot of experience.
So it's not just, Moose Valley Ranch popping up with an opinion about law enforcement with no background. There's a lot of background here and a lot of knowledge. Not so much for me. I'm just going to share some personal experience that I've had through the years.
You have a ton of experience, though.
I have personal stuff that's happened to me.
I feel like you've racked up a lot of experience from just navigating.
Yes,
and I know
navigating.
Navigating's a nice way to put it. You hinted in episode 8, it's not the last episode, but episode 8, that you kind of were in an area that is at risk for the vegan population. Am I allowed to say that? You would know better than I am.
Okay, so I don't say vegan population because...
Okay, sorry.
No. That is
not
wrong.
I apologize to any
wrong.
Vegans watching, listening.
So there is extremists in all categories, as in with all things. So you can be an animal rights activist, but then we're in a very heavily extremist animal rights activist area, which is a whole different, eating plant-based. You choose your food, you do your thing. You are vegan for the animals. Also, you do your thing. You come break into our farm because you want to protest. That's not the thing. So we have a little bit of that in our area where you start getting some of that, death threats and such, which we actually kind of touched on the very end of that in the episode with Jay, because we talked a little bit about how he first got involved in being on our social media and actually stemmed from that. But so we won't rehash that story, but we do come from an area where we farm. It's just outside of Vancouver. A lot of disconnect with where our food comes from. A lot more likely to have that kind of extremist activists in our area.
I appreciate so much when I hear you talk about that situation, how far away we are from the west side. So we are on the east side of Washington State, so much closer to Idaho, basically in Idaho, not Seattle. And it makes me very appreciative of our geographic location.
That would never happen in my ranching community.
Yeah, but okay, the flip side being that in our ranching communities, and I say that in ours because your ranch is directly north of my ranch, and we have pretty similar
Pretty
demographics
similar.
in
Yes,
towns. Yeah,
for
like
sure.
it feels minus the whole US Canadian thing, it feels very
Yeah.
similar.
We're 2 hours away from each other. Feels very the same vibe.
Yes, same mountains too.
Yeah.
Same huckleberries. Funny
Yeah, we
enough.
do. Yeah, we do.
Kendall once swore that she hadn't ever had huckleberries. And she said, I
Apparently I
don't think
had.
we have those in Canada. And I'm like, I don't think they stopped growing at the US Canadian border. Like, I feel because they're natural here, or they're not, what's the word? They're
Wild.
native here.
Yeah.
Wild, yes.
Yeah.
In our
I had to
mountains, and
call
our
Jay.
mountains are your mountains. And I was like, I don't think they just miraculously stopped growing at the borderline. Jay
I did not believe
confirmed.
you. He confirmed.
Jay confirmed.
He totally had your back.
They do have huckleberries up there. Okay, anyways, what's important though is in our ranching communities, which is different than your farming communities,
Yes.
is oh my God, the property crimes. The
Oh,
property crimes just kill me. We've been broken into
we
so
have
many
such a hard
times.
time with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I
I
think
feel like we both have.
for us, I think the hardest part, and I know, and when we sat down for this episode, I thought to myself, I was like, Jess is gonna give me like the you do it wrong. And I know I do.
No,
I know I do. No, I know I do. Because we farm and we ranch 6 hours away from each other, it's very obvious where I am when I'm where I am. Like as I'm producing content, it's very obvious if I'm at the farm or if like they're two different houses, they're two different properties, they're like they look different. The
they
landscapes
do.
are different. One is, 40 acres and one is hundreds of acres and it's very mountainous and off grid. It's obvious. There's nothing I can create for social media content without it being like a pre-canned, the farm store's open today photo that doesn't make it obvious where I am, which has in the past opened us up to some property crime. So we have to be somewhat careful, but at the same time, like we do have people at both ends. So we have people to look out for our properties at both ends. Obviously, when we have livestock at both ends, there's farmhands and things like that. But it makes it really obvious where Jay is, which is the biggest concern for me, is that I have to be careful that if Jay's at one and I'm at the other, that it's not obvious that Jay's not with me, but also it makes it really obvious when Jay's not at the farm versus the ranch.
That's a lot. I feel I'm not going to lie, I just got a little tired just thinking about the mental load that it takes. Like, it's just one more thing in the already crappy sea of owning a business and being an entrepreneur is then you add in this extra layer of we now have to also secure our stuff because apparently anymore they don't teach kids not to touch things that they don't own.
We literally had $80,000 worth of equipment stolen off the ranch, as you know. $80,000 worth of equipment stolen off the ranch. When was that? Earlier or last year? Mid last year?
Last year. Mm-hmm.
They used our own equipment to steal our own equipment. They used our machinery to steal our own equipment. I mean, we recovered it all.
Finally.
So that was good. Yeah, Jay did a little walk around town and we managed to get it all back. But
and that's what sucks the worst is not only do you have to try to prevent it in the first place, but then, and I say this as a law enforcement officer, there's not a whole hell of a lot they're going to do about it. So then you're also left like trying to solve the case on your own, trying to find your stuff and recover it back. Because honestly, depending on the department's policy and the state laws, or nation's laws, as we found out, as I was like trying to talk Kendall through, like, this is what I would do. But also the US system is way different than the Canadian system, and our laws are different and our procedures are different. Like in the US, I don't want someone else recovering my stuff and locking it into an evidence yard for 6 months. Some places will give it back. Some places will seize it as evidence and you won't see it for a while.
so I'm not going to recommend anybody take the steps that we took.
Yes. Full disclaimer, please
Full
do
disclaimer,
not do what
do
Kendall
not
did.
do what we did.
I mean, Jay
But
and Kendall.
it was Jay. So Jay's like 6'8", like this big Dutch farmer, and we lost $80,000, like all of our solar equipment, which for anybody listening, it is now not on the ranch any longer. We learned our lesson, but we had so much equipment stolen, and it was not insured because it had not been installed yet. So it was just going to be that we were out. Like it was our solar equipment, and until it was installed, it wasn't covered. So it wasn't covered. And there was like a bunch of different stuff in there. We were just not going to be able to recover financially the money. Like we would be fine, but we were not going to be reimbursed the money. So Jay did a little walk around town offering a $10,000 cash reward for the address, not for the return of our items, but for the address of the person who took
That's all
them.
he needed.
Yeah, he
Like
didn't even, he said,
Liam Neeson
I don't even
status.
need, yes. And then after like a week and a half, the stuff just reappeared. It
That's
just
not
got
the
brought
norm,
back.
folks. That's not the
That's not
norm.
the norm. But Jay was mad, like he had a hornet's nest in his shirt. He went around
Well,
town.
it does help. It does help that you guys are in an area where $80,000 worth of equipment is going to raise some eyebrows.
Yeah.
It's like the people that steal not a tractor. I was thinking about Brooks' tractor that just got stolen in
Yes.
Enumclaw. It's the people that steal like an excavator at a freeway site that I'm like, did you not think that anyone was going to be concerned when an excavator went running off the freeway side? Like, it's so
Yes.
obvious. And I feel like that is one perk in a small town is that if it's that big, that new, that distinct, it's going to attract attention.
Yeah. And like, I had a really major moment where I reconsidered how we were showing up online. It ended up being, though, not that. So initially I was like, I said to Jay right away, I was like, this is because I'm showing up online. This is because I'm like, there's no way for me to properly share this business without exposing things. But then we ended up finding a key for a quad from some other neighbor's property. So like they just hit a bunch of properties. So it didn't actually end up being what I thought, which at the beginning, which was they came and like specifically hit our property because they see us on social media and knew we weren't there. So it wasn't that. It just happened to be like they hit a bunch of properties because inside our tractor, they had the key from a quad that they had stolen. I guess they had dropped the set of keys into the tractor. And so they hit like 3 houses on our street. So it didn't end up actually being that.
I love social media twofold because I actually had the opposite experience. Like you're saying you think you got hit because of social media. I know for a fact the only reason we got our stolen trailer back was because of social media. And that is because we got broke into. We had been storing our trailer and a bunch of other things. What else did they take? There was a long list of stuff. I was so mad. I immediately started posting on social media. And of course, anything like that. I mean, people are so helpful and caring in a community, especially another business owner that gets hit.
Sure.
Like they are all on it. I think my post about the trailer getting stolen had 300 and some shares on local Facebook pages all over the place. It was getting some serious heat. And eventually, and I know this, so actually, I mean, I'm not the officer involved, so I guess I can talk about it. We found out through a search warrant. So they eventually caught some people selling someone else's stolen generator trailer. And when they served, that was like a $60,000 generator trailer that they had sat on for like a year. And then we're trying to fence back on Craigslist. And the owner of the generator trailer was still watching for his. And they had the same they never took the license plate off. And so he called our local sheriff's office, said, hey, I know this is my trailer. It's for sale on Facebook right now. I'm on my way. You better get there before I get there. Like they're thinking I'm going to come pay cash and this is my trailer and I'm taking, right? We love that. I can say that now that I'm not in law enforcement anymore. I can say that we love that. We're like, get it. Yes. You can do so much more as a private owner than we can as law enforcement. So they go down there, they get them, they hook them, they take them all to jail. They serve a search warrant on their phones. Inside the phones are messages between another turd bucket, for lack of a better word.
Yep.
Dude, you stole the cops' trailer. You got to that was the cops. You got to get rid of it. You got to hide it. You got to dump it. Like there was just all these text messages coming back. So immediately they're like, bazinga, they have the trailer, put the pressure on. Anyway, somebody rolled. They were so paranoid that we were going to find them at that point because that trailer was everywhere. Like that picture of that trailer was everywhere. That they had wrapped it in tarps and thrown garbage on top of it and like wedged it in between two other broke down cameras. It's really hard to explain in my area. Properties can get really trashed really quick. And it was like hidden in the middle of a dump, for the lack of a better word, covered.
It was down by the river.
Oh my God, I remember that.
It was down by the river.
I remember you asking me if it was. And then when I sent you the GPS, because of course I'm like updating, like this is vigilante status now, and updating you with the pin. And you were like, oh my gosh, it is down by the river. Jay was right.
My husband was deeply invested in where this trailer. Well, because I think both of those hits happened very
Yes.
closely to each other. So we were like watching how the two law enforcement officers were handling their property thefts, so that we could try to like. So we were deeply invested in how each of us was gonna get our stuff, and we both got our stuff.
We did. I, however, declined to take custody back of the rugs or any soft textile items that they had
Mm,
stolen as well, because in my eyes, you can never clean those enough. So I did leave
no,
those behind. I didn't recover those. And I had to
yeah,
piece my trailer back together. They took my internal racks and they put them on the top of their car. Very weird. Drugs are
yeah,
bad, guys. Drugs are really bad. So that, and they took my cowhide. They were my second cowhide stolen. I have replaced the cowhides 3 times total. I'm so
yes,
tired of buying cowhides. Why that's what walks off. Once, I'm pretty sure it was a wedding. I think they just
yeah.
kind of like packed it up with what
Packed it
they
up with
thought
their
was
stuff.
theirs. And then when I asked, "Have you seen this?" "No," was the answer. And I was like, "Well, it was there before, and it's a rather large cowhide. It's
Yeah.
hard to hide. It's hard to lose that." But then they took the next one with the trailer. And then they just broke in again. We just
I
got
don't
broke into again.
think I don't think so far any of the times that we've had property theft, I actually like initially at my gut check was that it likely lined up with social media because I'm constantly thinking about that when I'm creating content, but I don't think that it has lined up that way. I do agree with you on the fact that it can be a great tool to be able to actually get eyes on the stolen property, to be able to get a recovery
Mhm.
on it.
Yeah.
But I know that I was talking to you at the time about it and trying to kind of get advice from you on how to keep your property more secure. And I know you do certain things as far as like how you show up on social media.
Yeah, I think for me, there is always a conversation of risk versus reward. Like, how much is it worth to us? Are we willing to pay the thousands of dollars every month for a monitored, watched, live stream security camera setup in a remote area versus the risk of losing some things and having to replace them? That's kind of a constant question, too. So I always want people to buffer whatever it is that we're saying through, like, what is it worth to you? What's the value of things that you're trying to protect? Because what's right for me or what's right for you, it may be totally different for someone else. I try to do things like, especially when we were building our house, there was a lot of interest over our house. So it's a little hard to describe if you haven't been out here, but our house is on the opposite side of the highway from the main ranch. We're on a 80-acre chunk on the other side of the highway, and it's right by the highway. Like you can see,
Yeah.
not right, but like it's you can
No,
see
but it's you
everything
can
from the
see it
road.
from the road.
Yes, you can't see my parents' house from the road. Like one brief glimpse on a corner, but like you can't see back there. You can see mine from the road. And so there was a lot of interest as we were building and we were sharing things and people were wanting to see like layouts and floor plans. And I was like, nope, not sharing that.
Yeah.
Not going to share that online. So I will share like pieces of my house, but I'm not going to go video a walk in my front door, turn left into the kitchen, turn right into the bathroom. I'm not going to put that up there, piecemeal that a little bit. I try to be cognizant of what's in the background of like if I'm out in the shop working and CJ's filming in a direction where you can see everything behind it. I just feel like that's I don't know. I don't love that idea.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
try to just like pay attention to what's in the background of things. And then, different security measures. I swear this is going to be wildly not politically correct, but I swear that low-level criminals are like cockroaches, and when they see the sun, they scatter. So I'm a big fan of motion-activated lights.
Yeah.
Whether there's actually any research behind it or not, I don't know, but it makes me feel better. So we do a ton of like the solar-powered motion-activated lights, big, very bright LED lights. I like those.
When they took our solar, they smashed every one of those motion detector lights on the
What
ranch,
is
the
it?
entire direct like and
Yeah.
they weren't really super expensive, but they were worked really well. I honestly think that was one of the things that made Jay the most mad. Is like we got there and the one on the pole was smashed right
And
by our
just
driveway
hanging.
and just hanging and Jay's like somebody hit us.
Yeah, that's all you
Because
need
like
to
it was
see.
you
Yep.
could see it was hanging and it was like the one right at the gate and Jay was like somebody hit us.
Yeah, that we once had, it was a long, long time ago. My parents used to have rentals like a renter in that area, that house on the ranch. And so for the longest time it was occupied and there was always traffic in and out of there. And then it wasn't anymore. And I think eventually people just sort of think it's abandoned because it looks abandoned, like the one house that's visible from the highway does. And at one point they got hit. They stole my dad's entire Snap-on tools collection, like the
Oh,
original good steel with the giant red metal rolling, like
yes.
tens of thousands of dollars worth of his tools. They stole and they spray painted over the windows so that like you couldn't see that the lights were on as they were like loading and like that's how long they were
Right.
down there for,
Right.
which was demoralizing. And you feel so just gut-wrenchingly unsafe after something like that happens. And I remember, I think at that point, my dad kind of really closed in on himself. And he just was like, if that's what this community, if that's what's going to happen here, like, I think that was part of the beginning of the shutdown of him.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Close the
Kind of,
gate at the end of the driveway.
yep. Close the
Yeah.
gate at the end of the driveway. I have no desire to let people in. I have no desire to be nice. I mean, he just, if you stepped foot on his property and he didn't know you were coming and didn't know who you were, it just immediately like full threat mode. And you're like, whoa, where did like, dude, come on, I just want to hunt. And he's like, get the heck off my property. You know, just
Yeah.
I think that's where that started from. And I think it was really sad. He was like a super high ranking Snap-on sales guy back in the day. Like he had the truck, the Snap-on truck,
Yeah.
and he has like an award wrench that he won at Vegas. That was a big deal. And then they took all of it. And he's still like decades later, he still watches Craigslist for his gas pump. He had an anti-gas pump and they stole that.
Oh,
And he's like, I could recognize it, I swear. And I'm like, Dad, I love you, but like statute of limitations is gone. You're never getting this back.
yeah.
Even if you could identify it. So, okay, love lights. I love those. Like you said, though, if you can reach them, you can break them. I really like to put things out of reach of things. So if you have to like grab a ladder to install it for things like lights and stuff, as long as the motion will still trigger, that's best. If you can triangulate game cameras, so wherever one obvious game camera is or camera of any sort, that's immediately where they're going to go. So like if there's a red light on a camera and it's actively recording, that's where their eyes are going to go. I always have one then triangulating to that one because when they go to smash it, then you get them from another angle. They may not see you. I mean, it depends. I like to play with things like angles and cars. There were so many times I would respond to property crimes, especially where we are. There's like a ton of hunting property. So people buy like 20 acres just to come out and like camp during hunting season. And they would always say like, oh, maybe they have like one of those sheds that they like store their hunting supplies in. And they'd be like, get there. And they'd be like, I have a game camera up. They'd be like, cool, go grab it. We'll get a picture of the rig. This will be great. We know I'm going to use the term turd buckets again. I'm trying to keep this PG. We know every thieving car around here. So as long as you get a picture of the car, and you'd pull it out and it would be like a blurry picture of a branch because they never, like, they installed it. It looked good, but they didn't go pull the camera card and make sure that you could actually pick up a license
Oh,
plate with it. That
yeah.
happens all the time. So that's one huge piece of advice that I used to tell anyone anytime I responded to a call and someone was asking like, how can I do this or whatever, I would say, set up your cameras and then run a test. So if you're thinking you're going to get hit at night, come in at night and see what you pick up. Because if you moved the camera 3 inches one way or you turned on the light or turned it off or whatever, like you may have gotten a really good picture that we could have done something with versus just like a blurry blob that no one can ID anyone from or anything. So I
That's
love
such a
that
good
one.
idea. When the ranch got hit, we like literally stripped everything out of it. Cause we were so done and we didn't have animals on it at the time. So we just stripped a ton of stuff out of there and brought it back. But it is so disheartening. I can totally feel what your dad, was saying about just feeling that close the gate at the end. Cause that's how it felt for the ranch. Like we got hit in the off season. We only run livestock on the ranch during a certain time of year. We don't run it through the winter. And it was a vacant lot at the time. And it just felt they like used our tractor to load and it sucked. So then
It
it
feels really
definitely,
personal.
it does. And then it felt like, how do you even trust being able to bring stuff back there? So we definitely have taken things seriously and, we're doing a better job of closing that place up for the winter and bringing everything down. But I know that I've talked to you before about how, and I know there's not a ton that I can do when I'm not at properties and when it's really obvious. But things like going on holidays and not talking about those holidays until the holidays are past,
That's my favorite thing. I love when people will be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna stop by." And I'm like, "Actually, I'm in Arizona right now." And they're like, "What? I just saw on your stories." And I'm like, "Right,
Yes.
you did." And next week you'll see that I'm in Arizona and I'm actually not. I'm actually home now.
Yeah. And I have to be careful. Like I'm cautious that way. Like I'll make sure I put in some pictures, like older pictures with Jay, because I want people to know that he's here with me. Like if he has to take off for 2 days and go to the ranch and I'm on the coast, I just want people to think, like, to not realize that he's not there.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I obviously I don't think it's a bad thing because I do it all the time. I'm a huge fan of saving up some content, just filming some extra things, or intentionally just not sharing it that day and sharing it later. And you don't have to announce that it's not happening. You don't have to tell people that this happened 3 days ago. It's not happening today. People are not owed that on social media.
Thank you. We are not owed real-time updates on somebody else's life. And the reason for showing it later is very beneficial to your family, your property, your whatever, the security of your business. Plus, sometimes I just want a mental health break, so I'll post something that's old. But a lot of times it's for that reason, that I'm just trying to make sure that it's really obvious that Jay is here, not that he's at the ranch.
And that's counterintuitive for people, right? We just sort of get in the habit of assuming that's what they're doing because that's what we're seeing at that point in time. And if you've never created in that way, I think it is a mental shift a little bit. Mine came from being gone at the time I was working in law enforcement, and I had gone to a department that worked 48-hour shifts. And so for 48 hours straight, I was off of the ranch in a uniform and squad car that I couldn't leave. I couldn't, I mean, it would have been so obvious if either A, I went dark for 48 hours on a 48-96 schedule, or B, if I shared what I was actually doing, then everybody would have known that I wasn't at my house for 48 hours straight. And that just was not okay in any way, shape, or form for me. So that's when I mean, previously to that, I had, like you'd share old content when you're not feeling good or not feeling up to things. But I don't think I had gotten super intentional about it until I was gone for those really long stretches of time. And it became imperative. And I started creating that way. And I was like, man, this is like game changer in terms of content creation. This is game changer in terms of safety and security, game changer in terms of mental health. I don't have to share when it's actually happening.
And I got a really big wake up call for that. And I know that I had, before we started recording this episode, because Jess knows, obviously, all the backstory of all the things that have happened in my life. So when we sat down, I was like, I think I might mention the scenario I'm going to share a little bit about. And I said to Jess, but I don't really know if I should share the whole story. And we don't have time for the whole story. It's a very big
Oh my gosh,
story.
we need 4 episodes for that.
We would. This would be like a part 5. We'd still be talking about it. But it's when I really realized, I think, for the first time, the importance of being aware of what we're sharing and the fact that we don't need to share in real time. So I don't want to freak people out that this happened because of social media, because it didn't. It absolutely was something in my personal life that caused it, so that I ended up having to get what we call a protection order. Again, nothing to do with social media, but I had to get a protection order against somebody. But that person was utilizing my social media to be able to figure out where I was, to then act accordingly in the way that the courts and the police deemed was a security threat for me. So that was a huge thing, because when that first happened, of course, when your good friend is a police officer and works in, crimes against women and children, the first thing you do is call. I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? Just kind of walked me through some things. But I found that I really became resentful to having to share online. Like, you and I talked quite a bit about it. And I had this thing where I was like, I hope that I haven't built a business that is so reliant on me constantly showing up that now when I have something in my personal life that is causing me to not want to show up on social media for the protection of myself, that now I feel like, can I even do that? And that was something that was a really big eye opener for me. So at the beginning, I really I went black, like to the point that people were messaging.
Yep.
I was off because it was pretty crazy there for a bit. Like, I was getting tracked all over the place and things like that. So it was pretty intense. So I just went off. And I was getting all these messages from people being like, I hope you're okay. I'm not seeing you on social media. And thank goodness for my newsletter. Thank goodness I still had ways to communicate and market, because then I was just marketing through that. So thank goodness we've built a company that doesn't just rely on social media, and it doesn't rely on me like literally showing up in video every day if I don't need to. But that was when I really realized, because we did take a sales hit. So as much as my newsletter is great and all those things, when I just go totally dark, like black, we hit a sales thing. And of course, the conversation with my husband is not, well, you need to show up online, because Jay was like, we got to do what we got to do to keep you safe. This is not a thing. We are
Jay
not
was
worried
going to
about
ship
sale.
you to me if we needed
He
to.
was.
I mean, Jay was ready to like get you out of the country if he had to. We were ready to receive you.
I was only allowed to be with Jay or with Jess and CJ. It was the only places I was allowed to be. It was either with my husband or with Jess. So that was like my vacation. If I was like going to go somewhere, it was Jess was coming to get me and I was going to be able to go to see her. But
I got you.
Yeah, it was like when I say it was crazy. But it made it so that I had to reevaluate what that was going to look like for me showing up. That situation has since been dealt with. But at the time, I needed to figure out, like, is this even the type of business that I want to have to show up like that? And then it really made me realize, okay, well, then our sales went down. And as much as that's not a problem for anybody else in our lives, like my husband's not going to want us showing up on social media if it's putting me in jeopardy, obviously. But I know we need to make those sales. We've got a whole company that depends on my marketing abilities. So then what I started to do is really leaning into, how can I create content in a way that doesn't show where I am, that doesn't show what I'm up to, more of generalized content. I leaned really heavily into educational content at that time, so that it wasn't, it was taking old videos of the pigs and talking about the breeds that we raise, the fact that they don't sweat, how they use mud to so I was starting to create content that was less about me and more about just general information to get me through that little bit of a gap. And I'd still show like professional photography photos of me to tell them that the farm store was open. But I really stopped doing that, like, hey, we're just in Grand Forks and, we're just at the ranch type content.
I'm a huge fan of branding photos. And I love that vicariously this just brings it one more way to use those, as having that sort of bank of photos, the bank of B-roll where it's just you doing something absolutely benign, and I can share things from 3 years ago in a video and no one knows or even cares, right? Because the point of the video is not the action. The action is just the background to whatever is happening on it. That can really get you through some hard times, security issues. It can get you through hard times with mental health issues. If you're struggling to even feel like you want to show up, there are ways to just go back and repurpose. There's so many different ways to do it. But if you don't have anything built up, or you haven't saved it, or you haven't been capturing that, and then all of a sudden it comes to a crashing halt because of a safety or security concern, you're up a creek without a paddle. So let that be just like one more tick in the pro column of, yes, you should invest in some, a decent phone to be able to take decent B-roll, professional photos.
Because it fundamentally saved our company. And there is no way that I ever could have seen this scenario like this
coming down the pipe. Yeah.
Never.
You couldn't, that wasn't on your bingo card for 2024.
This was not a me issue in the least.
No.
I could not have seen this. Nothing to do with you.
No.
But I was the collateral damage in the scenario. And so then unfortunately, there was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't separate myself from it because of the family connection. There was nothing I could do about it. But it had like a $60-something thousand financial impact for us.
When I stopped for you.
When I stopped showing up because I turtled in. I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, but I hard turtled in, and then it had a really big impact on us financially, which again, that's not the most important part. But as the person who's responsible for generating the sales, I can't even tell you. It was just like this added extra stress of how do I show up now? And thankfully I can adapt and things like that. But it was so helpful having that content that you could pull forward, that stuff that it didn't matter because it was like obvious that it was older. It didn't matter because I was able to kind of formulate stuff so that I still had content going out. when I was going through that, the last thing that I wanted was to be writing like a super chipper newsletter. So having some professional photographs to be able to pull and put in there so that life could move forward for the company, that things could happen. Jay did some jaded content for me in Instagram stories and stuff because, nobody was coming for him. So it was easy for him to be able to show up, and that got us some additional content. But that was kind of part of my reevaluating at that time what social media needed to look like for me. I realized I didn't need it to be in real time.
I also really just trying to think of how to formulate this in a way that's not scary, but the odds are you're going to be a victim of some sort of crime at some point, whether it's property crime, a victim in a crash you didn't cause. I just saw today on social media someone's not stock trailer, but like living quarters horse trailer was T-boned at an intersection.
Oh,
Just like took out the
yeah.
family horses. Thank God the family was safe.
Oh,
But I mean, there's going to be repercussions. There's going to be impact. You are going to be affected at some point, your safety and security, that in ways that you couldn't even imagine. I mean, yes, we were cops, but like one Super Bowl, we had a suspect in a pursuit had bailed out of a car near our house. We had no idea. We were off duty. We were enjoying drinks, watching the Super Bowl, put the kids down. All of a sudden, there's banging on our front door, and CJ was in his underwear. Answer it like in his boxers.
Yeah.
Obviously, he answered the door armed because that's what you do at 11:30 at night when someone's banging on your door. Like it was frantic banging.
Yes.
He opens the door, and all I heard him say, because I was like in the hallway, this is at our old house, I could see him. I couldn't see what was happening through the door. And all I heard him say was, "What? What do you need? Why the do you have blood on you?" And I was like, whoop, full stop. On the phone with dispatch. I'm like, why is there? And we lived on a back road. Like this was not the house we're in now. Back road, way into the line. We were the very last house on a dead end road. Like you should not have been back there. You could have stopped at 9 other houses on the way. And there's 2 squad cars parked out in front. But somehow this guy in his panic had like missed that. So I called dispatch and they said, it's a suspect and there was a pursuit and they bailed and the car crashed. And so it's likely it's him. And I'm like, get an officer here now. And they're like, oh, they left the area. Like they just stopped looking for him, didn't send out any. And I mean, so you can't plan for that. Turned out I got hit in the face. I got punched when we tried to put him in handcuffs because CJ, we just tried to hold him down, basically was what it was. But CJ, this is a perfect segue. CJ had his service weapon in his hand and he was in boxers and there's no holster that boxers can hold up. So I felt so bad for him because he had so much guilt. Like I should have just not had the gun or something. And I'm like, no, I will get punched in the face all day long for me to know that you were armed. So don't feel that way. But he did. He felt like, well, if I had had my full gear on or my holster or like actual jeans with a holster on, I could have put the gun in the holster and then I could have gone hands-on with him instead of you going hands-on with him. And I'm like, well, either way, one of us was getting punched in the face. Like we're both capable of taking it. Been punched before.
And it's not like you would have been prepared for that moment. I mean,
right. I mean, when there's frantic pounding at the door, and at that time in that house, our kids' bedroom was between our bedroom and the front door.
Yeah.
So immediately your thought is like, get yourself between your kids and there. And we've talked through. So my whole point with that story was 1, you can't plan for when it's going to happen and it's just going to happen at some point. And then 2 is the firearms piece of it, which I think is super important in the women's space as well. And I have so many dreams on my heart, especially now that I'm not in law enforcement. I can like speak freer and I can do more things without impacting my employment or potentially cases or different things like that. If you are going to carry, and this is definitely more specific to United States, I get that it's a little different in Canada. The rules are just totally different. But in the US, if you're going to carry concealed carry, you need to know how to use it. You need to know how to get it out. And you need to practice doing that in the circumstances that you are actively carrying in. So if you are carrying while you're in the grocery store with a baby on your hip, then you need to figure out how to get that gun unholstered with a baby on your hip. 9 times out of 10 women can't do it. 9 times out of 10, they put it in an acute concealed carry purse. They never practice getting it out. And if push came to shove and your adrenaline was happening and there was a true threat, could you actually get it out? I don't think so. I don't think most women think that far ahead of it. Or they put it in the purse and they put the purse in the shopping cart. And then they wander away to pick out the most ripe avocados they can find. if you can't see my face, you can't see my face right now if you're listening to this, but I'm just like, oh my God, please, for the love of all that is that, please do not be that person if you're going to carry responsibly, but also prepare for that. When you carry a weapon, especially if you're going to use it in the protection of yourself or your child or someone else potentially, you have taken on added responsibility and you need to do what you need to do to be prepared for that. And I think that gets missed a lot. So that was like my one important takeaway.
Yeah, that like
Please.
doesn't apply in my country at all.
Sorry.
Doesn't make much sense. No.
Does
I
not.
just
I
mean,
know at all.
I can't give a good like segue to that on any sort of opinion.
CJ has to warn me when I go to visit Kendall. He'll tell me, "Did you check your bags to make sure there's no ammunition in your bags? Like no stray bullets, no nothing." And I'm always like doing the pat down on myself of, "Did I get? Okay, I think I got it all." I
accidentally had one bullet from my hunting rifle in my suitcase that accidentally went to the airport with me. That wasn't
I've lost so many that way. I feel like they found it. Oh, of course they did. Of course they did.
Found it.
They always
do. At least they understood.
There's so much you can talk about. There's so many ways you can keep yourself safe. There's things, hotspots and cameras. There's the motion activated lights. There's just different tactics you can do. Biggest thing I think is paying attention to your surroundings. It's just like Jay noticing when he walks up that the light's been smashed. 75% of people probably wouldn't have even noticed. They would have like wandered in. And then the last big tip that I would love to leave people with is pictures and video nowadays are the minimum standard of proof, I would say. That's not a legal doctrine. That's not a legal opinion. But more and more we were hearing prosecutors tell us, judges tell us, well, if it's not on camera, it didn't happen. It's like, that's not fair. That's not how life works. It's not always possible to catch it on camera, but that's what they're looking for. Anything you can do to get video evidence, anything you can do to get pictures. If something's going down in front of you, get your phone out. Even if it ends up getting dropped, you can still hear things. You might be able to see things. Having something is better than having nothing. I think a lot of times we get caught off guard, right? We don't like it's like, oh, I should have pulled my camera out and taken a picture of that license plate. Or you turn around the corner on your property and someone's standing there who freezes and moves first and then they run off.
Yeah, and Jess comes at it from a law
much more
enforcement end of things. She gets a little intense.
I'm sorry. No, I come in so hot.
But it's important though. But I think being around you and spending more time hearing from you and CJ of just I'm not sheltered in the least. I really genuinely don't feel that way at all. I just feel like realizing and hearing it from the other end of things has really helped me. And that's the reason that I wanted to sit down and have this conversation on the podcast, is because sometimes that coming in hot and that really like clear perspective from you guys has been really beneficial for me, that when I am deciding to show up in a certain way or I'm deciding to share something, because people always ask me about my house. I live in an old historic home that was built in the 1800s and we've done renovations to it and stuff. And I hear you in the back of my head being like, don't walk through the entire house, Kendall. Don't give them the entire layout. Whereas then I can still show it, but in a way that like maybe I'm just showing the dining room and the living room, but I'm not showing the layout. And I'm not taking them for a walk through the property in a certain way. I'm showing them little clips of the property. I'm not showing people where my walk-in freezer is, because around here by the farm, our walk-in freezers get hit. So I might be showing somebody the inside of the walk-in freezer, but I'm never showing them where that walk-in freezer is in relation to the other buildings on our property, because that gets hit where my farm is and people break into them and steal a bunch of product. And then also it's a food safety issue because they leave the freezer open when they leave and it's not temperature controlled. So like there's certain things that I think of more so because it's happened in the past, more so because I've been through some things, but also because I've actually had the unique situation of being able to sit down, especially when that stuff was going on in my personal life, that Jay and I were getting a lot of background information from you and CJ, because CJ too, like CJ sat down with me a lot too and was giving.
Did we not say that either? He's a law enforcement officer. Did we forget that? I don't even think we mentioned that. But
I don't know.
Husband is still in law enforcement and has been in for almost 15 years, if not longer than that. So
Yeah.
massive
So like
experience there too.
CJ and Jay were talking about how that was like the things that were happening. And I was bringing to you guys what the police were telling me here. So there was just like a lot more information, and I've had a lot more conversations on the topic. And it does help me because I'm not scared to show up online. I don't want anybody to ever think that they listen to this podcast and then they never wanted to share online. I don't think that's the point of it. I don't think it's like fear is not helping in the scenario. I think just the knowledge to be able to say, these are the real realities of some things that can happen when we show up online or when we're running businesses on our properties, where we're inviting people onto our space and things like that. And when we're living rurally, these are things that can come up. And being aware of it helps it so that we can see the blind spots that maybe we didn't see before.
That's all I want for you listening here, is to start thinking about it. If you're happy-go-lucky listening to the podcast and you're just like, oh my gosh, I never thought about this. This is the moment where I want you to kind of like forehead to palm, pick up the phone, call your husband and be like, hey, did you ever think about what would happen in this situation? Or, you know, that gun you got me for Christmas that fits in, I don't know, this holster really well that I've never actually shot before? I think I should go put some rounds down range. I mean, there's so many little things like that. And the crappiest part about an emergency is that you can't plan for it. The crappiest part about someone else deciding to make you the victim of a crime is that you're not in control of that situation. And all you can do is react with the best skills that you have and the best preparedness that you have, and keep yourself as safe as possible. And that's what I want for you, is I want you to feel like you have a grasp, you've thought it through, you have a plan. And right there, you're ahead of 90% of other people just by paying attention, situational awareness, knowing what's going on. I even think, and I know we're running a little long here, but I even think about like going out downtown with my girlfriends. Like we'll have girls' night out. A bunch of us are having drinks and we're going to go somewhere else for dessert, and we're walking downtown. And they're not paying attention to anything. They're swinging their purses around. They're stumbling over on the sidewalk. They're not giving a wide berth to anyone. I just go on high alert because it's like everything that you are walking past, every person that looks like they're asleep on the ground is a potential suspect. I mean, that sounds really bad, but like truthfully, there's a time and a place to be oblivious, and that's not when you are on your own or the only person to rely on. Please just start paying attention.
When Jess and I eat together, I'm always the one with my back to the door because Jess always has to be facing the door.
What's so weird though is I don't always have to be facing the door because CJ faces the door in our relationship. So I'm very comfortable. I'm not like a lot of law enforcement officers will tell you like, I'll never sit that way. And I'm just like, I mean, 9 times out of 10, they're going to shoot through the picture window before they shoot through the front door, which is a very morbid way to look at it. But we both had to be comfortable with our children. So we have real threats in life in the sense that I worked in a really small county that we lived in. So we would go to like the grocery store and I would look left and there would be the guy that I arrested last week. CJ would have no knowledge of this because he doesn't work in that area. He's not familiar with this person or wouldn't recognize them. He might know the name, but like wouldn't recognize them. And we had to have a safe word so that he would know to scoop up the kids and get out of the store, period. Like we're not playing around with this. And both of us, which I think is the unique part of us both being in law enforcement, both of us had to do that because then we would go to the area that he worked and I would have to hear the safe word and get the kids and get out of the store. So there's times, and then we have these things where you don't enter in the door of the house after dark without safe words. You don't, if someone says like, go now in the rig, like you just take off and drive. So if we pull into a gas station, I'm getting ready to get out and go buy my white cheddar Cheetos because those are my favorite. And he says, go, you don't even think about it. The car is in reverse. We are leaving. Like there's just some instantaneous things, but that's a very like high alert level from that law enforcement and that active threat. I don't think the normal people need to have that, but I do think that I want you to be looking when you pull up to the gas station and go, that looks like a not so great car person. Maybe I don't want to pull in the parking spot right next to them. Instead, I'm going to pull up closer to the front doors where the clerk is making eye contact with me and I can see a security camera watching what's happening and there's better lighting. Okay, I'm going to go over here. So don't take it to my extremes. All fun things. Kendall's looking at me like, you didn't know? I don't know that you go very many places with CJ and I together. So I don't know if you've experienced that.
Oh, are you saying you aren't sure if I know that you two are intense
No,
on this?
no.
Like,
I know
yeah, I
you
do.
know we're intense, but I don't think you've ever been in the car with me when a safe word or something like that's
No,
gone down.
I've
Have
had
we?
to implement. I've implemented what I brought you guys a situation that I thought was an uncomfortable situation, and I got to see how the two of you handled and reacted
Oh,
to that.
oh, I forgot about that.
I called you guys
Did
in a safe word.
were we intense? I mean, I know we were because it was my child at that
I
point.
wanted the intense. I was calling
Okay.
for the intense. I was
Did
feeling
we
intense.
react
And I
accordingly?
wanted, yes. CJ
Okay.
reacted accordingly. I felt like it was an intense situation, and I felt like I was going to put myself into the intense situation. Like I was anti-burying your kids, where I was like, "Ooh, I don't like this," but then you guys were there, so I phoned it in, and then
Love
CJ
it.
came in.
He'll come in hot. It's so funny too because he's very type B. Like in person, if you ever meet him, he's like the most chill guy ever. He just super chill. Water rolls off his back until all of a sudden it's game on, and then it is
He was
like,
so intense. And I consider myself to be like, in an emergency, I'm very good. I think that's my
yes,
ADHD-ness. ADHD in an emergency, find yourself an ADHD friend.
oh yeah,
Very good in
I'm
an emergency.
amazing in emergency.
Hmm.
Yeah, oh yeah,
But
that's
then
a fair
CJ came
statement.
rolling in, and I was like, ooh,
You
snap.
got this. I
I
think
will
that's
see
why.
myself out of this problem.
Fun tip. I know we are long at this point, but fun tip. That is how I met CJ when we were working together as law enforcement. And so my first like exposure to this cute guy was a felony search warrant on a gravel road where he like came out with his AR slung and like we're breaching the door situation. And so oddly enough, I see a lot more of the type B CJ now because obviously we're together all the time and he's off a lot. But when I fell in love with him, it was like the very intense because we were on calls together. We were arresting DUIs together, executing search warrants together. It was like high speed, low drag. Yeah.
That is the most hilarious love story to
Oh,
me. Nothing
I have to
says
share one more. I have to
nothing,
share one
nothing
more.
says romance like a slung whatever you just said.
AR. It's a
AR.
gun.
Yeah.
It's like
I
a
know.
tactical rifle. Like he
Yeah.
had like the big vest
Yes.
on.
Oh no,
Dude's
I
got
get
big
it.
shoulders. And he's a very commanding presence. Like when he wants to, is like a very strong, we call it command presence. Spicy.
I love
One
that
of
you
my
were just
favorite.
fanning yourself.
Listen, if we are 10 years in and after having been in law enforcement that entire, do you know the statistics of law enforcement officers that get divorced?
I
First of
know it's
all,
pretty high.
just being in law enforcement, not married to law enforcement, is a really high divorce rate. And then if you add law enforcement to law enforcement, the shrink that did both of our psychs when we moved back to Washington State was fascinated by the fact that we were married for longer than a year, had procreated, and relocating and still firmly and solidly married. Like our psych evals turned into just like a white paper study for this guy. He wanted to know everything, how we had done this, because it was so mind-blowing.
I love that.
Okay, my one really funny story was on a DUI. Stopped this guy, Montana Highway 44, headed from Valier to I-15, just between Shelby and Great Falls, if that helps you place it at all. Those of you that know, you know. Jenny's going to be like, I know exactly where she's talking about. Anyway, dude tries to get on the freeway wrong way, going up an on-ramp. Like, it's an on-ramp for the freeway, and he's coming up the wrong way of an on-ramp. Stop him. He's like the nicest old guy. He's in overalls, but he's got like his bottle in his overalls pocket because he's been drinking and driving. Super polite. Yes, ma'am. You're so pretty. What do you need? One leg stand. Oh, yep. Okay. We're doing this. CJ hears me call out. I'm on SFSTs, which means I'm out on fields. Typically, when you hear that from another officer, you always go to provide cover because they're trying to watch for clues of drunk driving. They can't be as situationally aware. So you send a cover unit. CJ was my closest cover unit. He rolls in. I was so like young and cute at the time. He rolls in. He immediately spun this guy up by like his sheer presence alone. Torqued this guy, went from 0 to 60, just bad. And CJ immediately was going to go like hands on. And I'm like, whoa, dude, listen, we were good. He was compliant. Everything was great. You need to leave. Oh, he had the hardest time walking away. The minute he walked away, this guy, sweet as pie. Again, just like the switch flipped. And I was like, that's that command presence coming in. And I think that was the day that I was like, oh,
I think you're kind of cute.
I think you're cute. And then I made him cookies. And that's how I got him. So if you're ever wondering.
Oh my God. That is hilarious.
It's all
definitely wildly different than my love story, but I really like that one.
We're going to get into that one in the next, maybe not the next episode, but we are going to. Anyways, okay, we are over time. I hope that helped you have some things just to think about. If you have experienced something like this, you are not alone. Just one of the reasons why I love our podcast so much is that we get to just share these experiences. We love seeing you guys share these online, share clips of it, share what resonates with you, a tip that you got from it. So thank you so much to all of you. We just pulled downloads and we hit some cool milestones of that. And we just really appreciate all the love that you are showing us. So if you get a chance, you're listening to this, you love it, share it on social media, tag us in it so we can see it. Have a great day.
Bye, guys. Thank you for listening to this episode. We know there are only so many hours in the day, so we're honored you choose to spend some of your time with us. If you're one of the many rural women entrepreneurs who are struggling to find true community and step-by-step support that actually moves the needle in your business, join our signature group coaching program, the Workhorse Collective. You can find more information in the show notes of today's episode.
Together, we've set out to support and connect with women in rural business. If you found this episode valuable, we'd love it if you'd share with another woman in your circle. It would also be incredibly helpful if you would take a moment to leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and we'll catch you next time on the Workhorse Podcast.